Great job over this module. You are going to see some questions over forms of ownership. So let's quickly go over a review. Now, don't forget about ownership in severalty. That's ownership by a sole or single person. Remember, you can associate the S in severalty with the S in single or sole ownership. And it's very important to remember that corporations take title to property in severalty because they are considered a single entity. The exam writers love to use illustrations or love to put into a question that it's Acme Inc. Inc. And don't forget, Inc. Inc. period stands for incorporated, which means that business is a corporation. So they therefore would take title to property in severalty. Now we had co-ownership interest. That's ownership by more than one person. Could be two folks. It could be three individuals. It could be a husband, wife, and a single person. It's co-ownership. It's more than one party. And there's two types of those that we discussed. There's actually three as tenants by the entirety, but two types when you get into multiple owners, more than two or more individuals. Joint tenancy and tenancy in common. How do you remember those? A lot of information. Just remember there's some key points. Tenancy in common, you can leave your interest to your heirs and you can have undivided interest. You can also sell your interest without the approval of the other owners at any time. With a joint tenancy, it's a little bit different because you take possession, interest, time, title. All of that happens at one time. PIT, P-I-T-T. And remember, you have what is called a right of survivorship with joint tenancy, which means if one of the owners dies, the other owners receive their interest. And remember, it's equal interest. So if you had three individuals, joint tenants, they took possession, title, at the same time, and they all have the same equal interest, right? 1/3 interest. One of the joint tenants dies. The question may say they have a will or they died testate or something like that. That doesn't really matter because it's a joint tenancy. So their 1/3 interest gets distributed to the other two surviving co-owners. And now they're still joint tenants and they each own 50% interest. The other one of those joint tenants dies, then the sole remaining owner owns the property in severalty. They could leave it to their heirs. So again, it seems complicated, but just remember, joint tenancy, right of survivorship has to be equal interest. Don't forget about PIT. But with tenancy in common, there can be unequal interest, and you can leave your interest to your heirs. So they're going to give you some little bits and pieces or nuggets in the question, and you know some of those specific key features about each one. You can answer those very, very easily. I know you can. So tenancy by the entirety, husband, wife, pretty self-explanatory there. We talked about community property and separate property. Remember that community property is property that is purchased together by the husband and wife while they were married. There are community property states out there. Separate property in a community property state says that the spouses brought those items to the marriage. So, or you inherit that while you're married. So anything you bring to the marriage or inherit during the marriage is considered separate property. But things you acquire together while you are married, that is called community property. Don't forget about the dower and courtesy rights that husbands and wives have. Know those definitions. They love to use those in the questions. And then remember, homestead exemption means an unsecured creditor could not force the sale of your property. We talked about timeshares, and I just want you to remember, sometimes we think about a timeshare and we think that has to be a rental situation, but a timeshare can be an ownership interest as well. So don't let little words like that throw you off. Same way with a condominium or cooperative, they may throw the word office or industrial into that. And a lot of times we just think of a condominium as a home, but there are condominium office complexes and industrial complexes. But just remember, with a condominium, you own fee simple title, you own that block or unit of air, and you own the common areas or the common grounds. There's a swimming pool or a tennis court or a clubhouse. You own that as those common areas or common elements with the other condominium owners as tenants in common. Why tenants in common? Because you can leave that to your heirs, right? And you can sell your share without getting everyone else's approval. So it kind of makes sense now as you look about the difference of tenancy in common and why that's set up versus joint tenancy. And a cooperative is a long-term, I'm listening, good job, proprietary lease. You get stock in a corporation. So if the cooperative goes and takes a loan out on the building and you don't make your payment to the cooperative, everybody else has to pick up the slack for you. But in a condominium, you own fee simple title. So if you take a loan out on your condo, you don't pay the loan payment, they're going to foreclose, right? Same way with your real estate taxes. Those would be liens that could be foreclosed on, and you could lose your property. But in a cooperative, you're just getting shares of stock in the corporation. If you don't make your payment, the other owners have to help you out. So don't forget those. Don't forget that most condominiums might have a first right of refusal. That just gives them the opportunity to buy your condo before you can actually sell it. So if I'm selling my condo, somebody wants to give me $100,000, I can go to the condominium association and say, hey, I'm selling my condo to this person over here. They're giving me $100,000. The condominium may say, hey, we want to buy that. It's interesting. Where I live, I have sold a lot of property in a development called Terre de Lac. Great area, lots of lakes and golfing, beautiful location. But they had a first right of refusal on every property there. And I remember one time I had an owner that just wanted to get rid of the lots because he didn't want to pay the annual assessments, association dues. So I had somebody that wanted to pay $300 for this lot. And we had to get a first right of refusal from Terre de Lac. And they said, the owner, developer said, no, I'll buy it. If you're selling it for that price, I'll buy it. And I remember the buyer was so upset and so mad. But if you have a first right of refusal, whatever offer you are going to sell your property for, you have to give the person who owns the first right of refusal, could be the condominium association, or in my instance, Terre de Lac Association, you have to give them the right to match that price or to purchase it. They have the first right of refusal to purchase it at whatever sales price you've agreed upon with your buyer. So don't forget those. Know this information. It's an important chapter, and we're going to see just how well you know forms of ownership by doing a review quiz next.